Well, I was just thinking that this is Podcamp. This is a podcast. Maybe we should narrow the focus for a little bit and talk about where podcasting is today, where we thought it would be today 5 years ago. When Dave Jones and I pushed the big red button to record the very first episode of Inside PR, it was April of 2006. And I distinctly remember being in Dave's office and saying, Dave, we've got to start this now, because in 6 weeks there's going to be another PR podcast, then there's going to be 5 more after that, and we've got to get on this fast if we're going to build a listenership and gain a foothold in this, really, before the tsunami hits us and we're swamped. Here we are, 5 years later. I think we're probably still the only Canadian PR podcast out there. And the big wave of podcasting that I thought was about to swamp our shores has never really hit. And I'm curious, many of you probably have podcasts or listen to podcasts. I'd be curious to know what your thoughts are on why podcasting hasn't taken hold the way we thought it would back then.
Well, Terry, I'm glad you decided to hedge your bets and go for that sure thing of writing a novel. To get some popularity and bank on podcasting working out.
What's broadcasting where we novel? That's a whole story in and of itself.
So say that again?
But what podcasting did for your writing career?
Well.
Sorry for jumping the gun.
It's your own show.
Yeah, someone will produce it, maybe Community Deepers will come back.
Yeah. How about Shill?
How would that go?
For those who don't know, if you go and Google Shill, you'll find short-lived but colorful in its language podcast.
It had several great episodes. Good. Where are we at?
The future of podcasting, or where it went. Did anyone have any thoughts on that? I mean, I think at the time, we were living in a bubble. Everyone we spoke to, everyone we worked with, everyone we hung around with was immersed in social media, and for me, podcasting. So we'd go to Podcamp, we'd go to Podcasters Across Borders. I went to Podcast Expo twice in California, and we were living in this bubble of podcasters. And we thought everybody was like that, but no, it was just this little group of podcasters. So why hasn't it taken hold? Eden.
It's too bad Sylvain Parmesan, who's here this weekend but is not in this room, did a phenomenal presentation at Podcamp Montreal. I heard about it after I was able to be there. But he had all kinds of stats because the CRTC has been doing research, and actually, I wish I had the numbers, but adoption of podcasts and more the hobbyist podcasts, not the CBC produced ones, are actually growing exponentially in Canada.
That's good news.
Yeah.
But it also seems that of all the things that we do in social media, podcasting was one thing that mainstream media embraced right away. And they are doing a really good job at it. I know I listen to so many different CBC shows or NPR shows that I wouldn't have listened to because I just, was too busy on a Saturday afternoon or, a Thursday evening to listen to it. And now you can, if you're at the gym or wherever you are, you can listen to those shows. And I wonder if that hasn't had an effect on this. And I also feel like, with all due respect to Winnipeg, which is where I'm from, that podcasting is like the Winnipeg of social media. It's a city that, that is always on the cusp of something, but just hasn't gotten there yet.
Well, I'm not sure, but I agree with the premise. Dave, do you want to jump in?
No, I'm just laughing at Martin. Which is like the Winnipeg reference. It's kind of like the Mitch Jones reference to Montreal, except there's no way Martin's ever been paid by Winnipeg.
I actually think, Terry, that podcasting is fulfilling the expectations that many of us had. It's not fulfilling the expectations of those people who thought that radios would no longer be turned on. But for anybody who was looking for content that was not ephemeral, but rather would reside on a server, that was searchable, and that you could follow, and because bandwidth is infinite, could be niche-oriented, podcasting is truly fulfilling its potential. And long before I started to do this less than a year ago, I don't know whether I'm atypical in this room, but I just look at my iPod. I've got, New York Times, the Bits podcast. I've got Blog Talk Radio Government 2. That's really niche. I've got Grammar Girl, as we probably all do, the HBR IdeaCast, Harvard Business Review, Managing the Gray with CC Chapman, Mac Dose, Media Bullseye Radio, Net at Night, rebooting the news with Jay
It's only
Rosen
half hour
and David
session.
Weiner, and This Week in Google. I mean, it's really niche what I listen to, but there's lots of it there. Am I the only person who does that?
Well, I think there's, I mean, to go back to your original question, most of us don't listen or don't learn by listening. We learn visually and we learn by reading. And it depends on, you know, how you learn, which one you prefer. But I think that that's part of the reason it hasn't exploded like they thought it was going to 5 years ago. Because you look at the HubSpot and, you know, eMarketer stats and it shows this huge trend and it just hasn't hit that. And I think that's why, is because we don't learn by listening.
Yeah, that may be right. And the other point was, I had a reputation around our boardroom when we were just brainstorming for clients. I was always the one who said, after we built the strategy, and I said, what about a podcast? Just became a joke that, oh, Tara's going to say podcast. But not many of our clients picked up on the idea of using a podcast. Not many corporations or organizations are using podcasts in the way that I would have thought that they might be, to build their own communities, to convey their messages, to reach directly to the audiences with whom they're trying to connect rather than going through the media. And you know, we did some podcasts, we did some for General Motors, we've done a few for Allstate, we've done a few for some of our other clients, but not in ones and twos, not in tens and 20s.